Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. Congressman Ken Buck and many guests will be on in just a couple of minutes. We want more neighbors to get on the line if we can. You've probably been through this before with us before and done one of these calls. They're great. They're very informative, especially with the line of people we have on tonight. So, if you have a question, press 0 on the keypad on your phone, 0 if you have a question, and press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you want to be added to the email list, because this office does send out emails at least monthly to keep people up to date with what's going on, at least from the Washington end of it. So, 0 for questions and 7 for email updates. I'm going to say this a couple more times, and then I'm going to hand this off. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be on for the next hour. If you have a question, please press 0 on the keypad on your phone, 0 if you have a question, and press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you want to provide us your email address for email updates from time to time. Last time. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our telephone town hall meeting. Thank you again for joining us tonight. It's actually this afternoon out here. It's only 4 o'clock. Sorry about that. Anyway, 0 is for questions, and we see some people are taking us up on that offer, and that's great. But we do want to build up that email list if we can. So if you wouldn't mind, so we can send you an electronic update from time to time, press 7 on the keypad on your phone if you want to provide us with your email address. Congressman Ken Buck, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Kurt, and thanks, folks, for joining this call. We have 4 just great experts that can help us work our way through a lot of the issues that have arisen. We are in a time of a healthcare crisis. We are also rapidly approaching a time of an economic crisis. We have millions and millions who have sought unemployment benefits because they've lost their jobs, and we have to make sure as the healthcare crisis subsides that we are prepared to move forward and get our economy up and rolling again. We had an unbelievable streak of months going where the economy was growing, unemployment was incredibly low, and we have to, as a country, come together and make sure that we are doing everything we can to sustain that growth once again when it is safe to do so. I have made sure that I have done my very best not to point fingers in a partisan way or to question the motives of those who are engaged in the decision-making right now. I think we all have to learn from our preparedness as well as from our response to a disease like this. We have to make sure that the FDA is moving as quickly as it can in a safe way. We have to make sure that our hospitals, our private hospitals, and other healthcare facilities are doing everything they can to be prepared. At the same time, we have to keep in mind that there are many, many lives that need the income, and we have to get our kids back to school. There are a lot of priorities out there. So I'm going to introduce each of our experts individually, and then I'm going to ask them to just briefly introduce themselves, and then as questions come in, Kurt will read the question and will direct the question to one of the experts, and if it requires other experts to chime in, or if I have something to add, we will do that. So first we have Joey Jenkins, who is the Colorado Small Business Development Network Coordinator. Sorry about that. I couldn't read my own handwriting there. And Joey, would you please introduce yourself for the folks?
Yeah, thanks, Congressman. Hi, everyone. My name's Joey Jenkins. I am the director for the Colorado Small Business Development Center Network. And so what we are is 15 centers across the state. Each of those centers provide free consulting and low-cost training to small business owners. So we have a network of over 300 consultants. We are a federal and state resource, and that's why we're able to provide that consulting for free. In a time such as this, I think it's important for all of you to know that all of our consultants and staff and centers are teed up to help business owners navigate the many resources that are flowing out very quickly. I think each of the panelists on today will talk a little bit about some of those resources. And so just know that what we do is kind of help you guys navigate on the back end. So even if there are questions that don't get answered today, I think important to know that you can reach out to us and we can help business owners go through that. So I think just real quick, the best place to kind of find all of the resources that we have is going to be www.coloradosbdc.org, and that's SBDC is in Small Business Development Center. And if you go to www.coloradosbdc.org/COVID, that's where you're going to find all of the resources that we compiled. So, for instance, we're in the midst of putting together all the various local grants, loans, different funding sources for small businesses, in addition to resources around how to navigate the Paycheck Protection Program that we'll talk about later, and or the Economic Injury Advance, or some of the other programs. So I think in general, just know that that website is where you're going to find a lot of information, and then you can reach out to the hotline listed on that website, and or reach out to your local center, and they'll be ready to help you. Thanks.
Thanks, Joey. Next, we have Joe Barela, who is the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Joe, would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, Joe Barela. I am a member of Governor Polis's cabinet, and we are the department that handles unemployment insurance division, workers' comp, and several other departments that deal with labor and employment. Just want to spend a few minutes thanking everyone for their patience over the last several weeks as we try to get a handle on the unprecedented surge that the unemployment insurance division has had as a result of the health crisis, COVID-19. I want to just reflect a little bit that during the Great Recession, the highest volume in claims on a weekly average was about 7,000. We surpassed that application submitted the first week of the crisis with well over 20,000 claims submitted. And to date, as of the end of last week, we had seen over 250,000 claims or applications for unemployment insurance in the state of Colorado. At first, our systems were overwhelmed, but working 24/7 for that first week, we were able to bring up the system so that it could handle the volume. We put some gating processes in place to reduce the number of people trying to access the system so the system wouldn't crash and allow people to get through the application process and submit their claims. We do think our call center is still experiencing tremendous volume, and it's mainly people that want information about several of the provisions that were in the Families First as well as the CARES Act. And so we're fielding questions to get people to the right state agencies or federal agencies that are working with those federal relief packages. We do have the CARES Act provisions for pandemic unemployment assistance, and also extended employment benefits, as well as what people refer to as the $600 weekly additional unemployment benefits that are covered under the federal pandemic unemployment compensation program. Those programs were approved in late March by leadership in Washington, D.C., signed by the president, and we received guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor on April 4th. As you know, most federal programs do come with eligibility and criteria, and so we are desperately, frantically getting those into our online application system, and those should be available very, very, very soon so that those new eligibility workers, such as gig workers, independent contractors, 1099 employees, families and individuals that may have been impacted by the COVID-19 can now apply for unemployment insurance. We do think those will be available to you very, very soon.
Thanks very much, Joe. Our next guest and expert is my good friend, Dan Nordberg, who is the Regional Administrator for the Small Business Administration. Dan, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman, and we appreciate the continued partnership with yourself as well as your office in supporting small business during these difficult times. In terms of the Small Business Administration, obviously we have some unprecedented challenges in support of small business and some of the challenges that they are encountering as we fight coronavirus collectively. For the Small Business Administration, our main priority has been the implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program. And I thought I'd just go over that tonight because I continue to field a number of questions about eligibility and really how can the program help small businesses. First and foremost, this program is for any small business with less than 500 employees, including sole proprietors, independent contractors, as well as other self-employed individuals. Private 501c3 nonprofit organizations, including places of worship, as well as religious nonprofits, are also eligible, as are 501c19 veterans organizations, as well as tribal business concerns. Now, it's important to note that businesses in certain industries may have more than 500 employees if they meet the SBA's size standards for those industries. So one example of this would be in the manufacturing realm, where you could have employee count of up to 1,500 employees and still be eligible. So if you fall into a business category where you know there's an established SBA size standard, it's certainly worth double checking to see what your eligible employee headcount is. Another notable exception to the 500 employee cap in place is for businesses in the hospitality and food industry with more than one location, as long as they don't have more than 500 employees per physical location. So for example, you could have a restaurant owner with 4 restaurants and 200 employees at each of those locations, and that would be acceptable. In terms of maximum loan amount that you may receive under this program, it's determined based on a formula of your average monthly payroll from the year prior multiplied by 2.5, or $10 million, whatever is the lesser amount. So for many small businesses doing that formula, it is certainly going to be the lesser amount. Now, since this is an employee retention measure, the loan has some very prescriptive uses what you can use it for, including payroll support, employee salaries, paid sick or medical leave, insurance premiums, mortgage, rent, and utility payments. These are not direct loans from the SBA. The interface and the point of entry for this program is with your lender. So any insured bank, credit union, as well as farm credit institution are eligible to do these loans. SBA has provided delegated authority to these lenders to make determinations on borrower eligibility and creditworthiness without having to go through some of our usual channels as well as processes. And for eligibility purposes, instead of requiring lenders to determine repayment ability, which is really not possible during this crisis, we are asking to have the borrower certify the following: that they were in business, that they were an operational business on February 15th, 2020, and had employees for whom it paid salaries and payroll taxes, as well as a statement saying that the current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. This program has no lender fees for participation or borrower fees. There's no credit elsewhere standard. There's no collateral or personal guarantee requirement to participate, and borrowers will also not be charged any prepayment fees. The maturity of the loan is 2 years. The interest rate is 1%, and all of these loans are 100% guaranteed by the federal government. It's also worth noting that SBA is allowing deferment of payments on these loans for at least 6 months, so at least providing a little bit more flexibility for small business owners in terms of their repayment schedule. Now, the primary feature of the program is loan forgiveness, and the statute establishes that the borrower shall be eligible for loan forgiveness equal to the amount spent by the borrower during the 8-week period after the origination date of the loan for payroll costs incurred as compared to the year prior. So in essence, there's going to be a year-to-year comparison of your average FTE and payroll, and your loan forgiveness will be proportionate to maintaining employees and wages. The amount forgiven will be reduced proportionally by any reduction in employees retained compared to the prior year, and reduced by the reduction in pay of any employee beyond 25% of their prior year compensation. Last but not least, 75% of the loan must be used on payroll in order to receive the full loan forgiveness. So that does allow for the remaining 25%, which can be used for mortgage, rent, and utility payments. I'll just close with this, that while this program has just been in effect for just a short amount of time, already here in Colorado, we have 28,469 loans processed and approved for close to $6 billion. So the capital is getting out to the small business owner. The program is working, but we know there's more work to be done. So appreciate the time again, Congressman, and welcome to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Dan. And last but not least, I want to introduce Michael Van Norstrand, who is with the Independent Bankers Association. And Michael, if you would please introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Congressman. I am Mike Van Norstrand. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Bankers of Colorado. We represent 55 independent community banks, mostly smaller banks, but not necessarily small, with about 500 branches located at all four corners of the state. I would say the last couple of weeks, I've been primarily working very closely with Dan on the Paycheck Protection Program and making sure our banks are getting access to that and navigating it. And we're making great progress, and our banks are getting many of these loans funded, and the backlog of getting them onboarded is diminishing every day. And I think our community banks are doing a good job of administering this program. But beyond the Paycheck Protection Program, our banks are doing other things because we are essential businesses and we are open. We're making sure that our banks are safe for customers to go, whether that's sanitary issues or things like that. You're closing down lobbies and figuring out ways to enhance our mobile delivery systems and those kinds of things. But beyond the PPP, our banks are also working on innovatively crafting solutions for our customers in need, such whether that is modifying existing loans to interest-only payments or interest rate reductions or maturity extensions and those kinds of things. They're also being creative in creating new crisis response products, whether that's personal guarantee short-term lines of credits or bridge loans and those kinds of things. And our banks are our neighbors, and they exist on Main Street next to their customers, and so they are doing everything in their power to help those folks out.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. Kurt, if we have any questions, would you please read the question and then direct the expert that is relevant to answer that question? That would be super.
You bet, Congressman. We have a ton of questions, and a couple of housekeeping moves first. If you have a question, press 0, although we do have a bunch, and we're always trying to build up our email list. If you want to get on our email list for email updates, especially during these trying times, please press 7 to do that, 7 on the keypad on your phone. First question is from Ann from Monument, and Congressman, this one's actually for you. Wants to know when things are going to be opened up.
Well, that's a great question, Kurt. My understanding is that we are, in Colorado, we are trying to move towards a phased reopening. That the first phase will probably happen at the end of April, and will only happen if we continue to see the progress that we have seen with the disease sort of flattening and not surging, most importantly. And that will be hopefully a get back to work order from the governor. And after that, we will start to see other activities increase. Restaurants probably won't be included in the initial order, but we will see some businesses opening. I think we will see some precautions being taken in terms of masks and other things. I think we will also see more larger interactions of the public allowed as time goes on. So I'm hoping that by mid-June, we are going to see, if we don't see a resurgence of this disease, we're going to see life return to somewhat of a new normal. Until we have a vaccine in place, we probably won't see an old normal in place. And I say that knowing that a vaccine is 18 months to 3 years away. But we will hopefully see a return to what we to as much of our normal lives as possible. I think everybody has sacrificed. My biggest hope is that the athletic gyms and other things can open up, because I really miss getting in the swimming pool and I miss doing those things. I'm sure other people have their favorites. We are fortunate to live in a great state where there's a lot of outdoor activities, and those are safer than some of the indoor activities. But Kurt, that's the best answer I can give at this point.
It's a darn good answer. Thank you, Congressman. Okay, Grant from Sterling. And this is for everybody, so just take them one at a time. Start with Joey, Joe, Daniel, and Michael. Grant's question is, I have a small carpet cleaning business. I typically hire seasonal help and don't have any employees at the moment. Would I qualify for business loan or unemployment? What kind of benefits are there for people like me? This is from Grant from Sterling. Joey, why don't you try and answer that first, if you wouldn't mind, please?
Yeah, sure, and then I'll let Dan and others come in too. So from my perspective, as long as the loan, what you want to do is the Paycheck Protection Loan, and what that does is it takes into account your payroll for the last year. So it's going to average out your payroll last year, and then you get essentially 2 months of payroll plus 25% operating expenses on top of that. So as a business owner with no current employees right now, you can still get that loan to cover yourself, your own employee costs. And then in addition to that, there is also the economic injury disaster loan. And so what that is, that also provides a cash advance up to $10,000, and that is $1,000 per employee. And so my advice to everyone at this moment is to apply for everything that's out there, and then as you start to weigh your options, and as that grant and as the loans come in, then you can decide what the best move is for you.
And this is Joe from the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. As an employer or a business owner, if you paid into unemployment insurance, you could be eligible to collect unemployment insurance yourself. If you were an independent contractor and didn't pay into the unemployment insurance system in Colorado, you would be eligible with the CARES Act that authorizes pandemic unemployment assistance and the federal pandemic unemployment compensation of the additional $600 a week when your situation changed.
You know, this is Dan Nordberg, Regional Administrator with SBA. I think Joey and Joe did a great job answering the question. I'll just add one more thing as it pertains to some of the loan products referenced. The Paycheck Protection Program you can certainly utilize. It's just important to note that that is payroll-centric, and that if you utilize the economic injury disaster loan that was also referenced, you could not utilize that for the same purpose. So those loans can be used on a parallel track. They just cannot be used for the same purpose. So, for instance, if you wanted to use the Payroll Protection Program to help pay with your payroll, you could use the economic injury loan to utilize that for some working capital and some fixed debts that you would have otherwise been able to cover had it not been for coronavirus. So just wanted to make sure I referenced that.
Yeah, and this is Mike from the IBC, and I would just add that, you know, beyond those couple of federal programs that were brought up, I would contact your bank and look into some of those other things that I mentioned earlier, whether it's some kind of short-term bridge loan or line of credit or those kinds of things.
And
So,
actually,
go to the next.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kent. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you to go to the next question, if you would, please.
Yeah, I had a quick question for Mike, though. Mike, what banks are giving out loans right now? I think there's just a certain type of bank that are doing the loan process. What's that all about, please?
Do you mean the Paycheck Protection Program, or what banks are
Any of them? I think there's
that?
like something 7 or something like that. There's certain banks that are doing loans and certain ones that are allowed to and certain ones that aren't. And some are doing some and some aren't. Tell us about that, if you wouldn't mind, please.
I've not heard that. I know my membership, everybody that I've polled and heard back from in surveys, is participating in not only the Paycheck Protection Program, but all their regular lending as need be. I've not heard that there were only 7 banks.
No, not 7 banks, a type of bank or something like that. Well, that's fantastic news. Most other states, that's not the case, but Colorado seems to be stepping up. You guys are really doing a great job on that. Let's take another question if we can. It's going to be for Randy, and this is for both Dan and Mike. Randy's question is, he owns a small business, has only 2 employees. Will he qualify for any loan assistance? If he has a 401k, can he use the 401k without being penalized? Dan,
this is
your thoughts.
Yeah. I would be doing a disservice because I'm not familiar with all the provisions of the CARES Act as it pertains to some of the penalty provisions for utilizing a 401k. I do believe that there was some relief provided in that bill, so I'll allow anybody else on the panel to answer that question. As it pertains to eligibility for the Payroll Protection Program, as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, certainly based on what you've discussed via the question, you certainly would be eligible.
Anybody else want to add that?
Yeah, this is Mike, and beyond what Dan said about the CARES Act, I do recall as well that there's some relief in there for people who utilize their retirement accounts on the penalty side, but I'm not an accountant and not as well versed on that to give a definitive opinion.
Thank you, everybody. Rick's question is, Rick is from Fort Lupton. And this is going to be for Joey. He's wanting to know when and how we will receive our stimulus check, and will it be through Social Security? Joey?
Yeah, similar to Dan, I can't quite speak to that. So I am a state employee, and then I get some federal funds, and so I don't work for the IRS, and so I can't tell you specifically when people will receive the check. So I'll have to defer that one, though it does sound like it is supposed to be rather quickly if you have used direct deposit for your past tax returns. If you have not, then it will be delayed by quite some time.
And this is Mike. I can say that those direct deposits did start happening last week. I'm not sure the income levels, but they were starting out with the lower income thresholds in terms of AGI, where those direct deposits were going to start happening first and then slowly ramp up. I heard that paper checks probably won't start going out for about 3 weeks or so.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that information, guys. Next question is Connor, and he's coming from Castle Pines, and he's been on unemployment for 2 weeks before everything started with the COVID-19. How does he go about reapplying? And that would probably be targeted towards Joe. Joe, what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for the question. If you were already determined eligible pre-pandemic or pre-COVID, you just need to keep recertifying that every two weeks with your PIN, and you won't have to reapply. What will happen is, as of the week of March 29th, the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, the additional $600 a week, will be added to your weekly amount of benefits. And that will stay in place for the 26 weeks if you're still employed for that duration. The most important thing is that you every 2 weeks need to go into the system with your PIN and certify that your circumstances have not changed, or if they have changed, there will be an impact to your benefits if you've gone back to work.
And Liz has a dovetail question. Already on unemployment, curious as to how the $600 will be added to my benefit. Who wants to answer that question, please?
Again, you don't have to do anything if you're currently on unemployment or have been determined eligible for unemployment and you've received a PIN. As long as you're going into the system and entering your status with your PIN, you will get your regular weekly unemployment amount that you're entitled to because you are eligible. And then as of the week of March 29th, that $600 will start appearing in that weekly benefit. I know we're past March 29th, but that will catch up to you. And so let's just say that goes into effect this Sunday. You put in your information for the benefits that you're determined eligible for. The weeks that are in the rears from March 29th, I think that will be 3, that will be made up to you in that weekly payment.
Thank you. This question is from Les, and he's in Morrison. Regarding the Payment Protection Act, I own a small business with 23 core employees. I've been trying to file an application, but everywhere that I've tried to apply is not accepting applications. Where do I need to go to apply? And this is Les from I guess Morrison. Dan, is that you? Is that your?
So I can take that. Actually, this is Joey.
Okay.
I would. I think a couple of things here. So what's happening a little bit is that, and this was referenced earlier, in order to administer the Paycheck Protection Program, banks had to be certified through SBA. The whole situation got a little tough because the way the CARES Act was implemented was it was thrown out very quickly, and both SBA and the banks had to rush to figure everything out on the back end. What happened after that was that certain banks weren't quite ready or set up to administer the Paycheck Protection Program, and so they were prioritizing their clients. And what we've done at the SBDC is we have a list going of lenders, and so what I would recommend is to reach out to the local SBDC, or if you go to www.coloradoSBDC.org/COVID and reach out to your local SBDC there, because what we're doing is on a daily basis procuring and figuring out which banks are currently accepting outside customers. And note that it is changing rapidly. So, for instance, Sunflower Bank was taking outside customers as of I think 2 days ago, and then they hit their liquidity limit and had to stop, I think, yesterday. And so, it's changing daily based on which of those banks is able to accept that. But that is my guidance to that individual as of now.
Thank you. Kevin's question, and this is for Congressman. I'm a self-employed rancher. What's being done to help the ag industry here in Colorado?
Well, let me first direct that to Dan and see what is the SBA doing to help those in the ag world.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman, and obviously a great question with the impact that agriculture has in our state, and as well as ranching. As it pertains to the Paycheck Protection Program, our agricultural industries are included in that. So there would be eligibility under that program for you to be included. Now, one thing I have to preface, in terms of the full definitions of eligibility and some of the guidance that is coming forth for inclusion of ag-related industries, we are still waiting for those final specifics. However, what has been put forth, we do expect broad inclusion. So everything from production of food and fiber, ranching and livestock, farms, as well as other agricultural-related industries, those are covered. We're just waiting for some of the specifics on definition and eligibility. So if there's a certain circumstance with respect to your business that you'd like to talk about, would love to speak with you offline more in depth to see how we might be of assistance and cover you under this program.
Great, Dan. And I don't know if any of the other experts have anything to add to that. Certainly, many of us in Congress have large ag districts and are focused on making sure that this bill, the bills that have been passed, as well as future legislation, applies to ranchers and farmers. I think on a more of a macro level, the president has done his best to make sure that our trading partners are treating us fairly, and we are opening up markets both in Asia as well as Mexico and Canada. And so hopefully commodity prices and other prices increase as markets open up.
Thank you. Our next question is from Wendy for Dan. A little confused on SBA Express Bridge loans. Not sure I can apply for that. Where would I look for that? A little confused on SBA Express Bridge loans. That's Wendy's question from Parker. thoughts about that, sir.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Wendy. And with respect to the SBA Express Bridge Loan, that's a maximum loan size of $25,000. You can get some additional information on that at sba.gov, but one of the nice things about our Express Bridge Loans is the quick time and turnaround in which you receive that. So it's a 36-hour turnaround. No collateral is required. So would encourage you to look more at sba.gov for some of the more program specifics, but hopefully that gives you at least initial start. And again, if that's something I can speak to you offline about or more in depth with respect to your certain circumstance, would be glad to do so.
Thank you for that. If you want to provide us your email address, we have that queue finally cleared out. We had a lot of takers on it. Press 7 to provide us your email address, and 0 for questions. Michelle from Aurora. I have a business. I don't have any full-time employees, but instead have 1099 contractors. Do I qualify for any benefits? And Michelle's question is for Mike and Dan.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Dan.
Sorry.
No,
I was just
probably better poised to answer. Yeah.
No problem. Michelle, I would just say that you yourself applies and your business certainly is eligible for the program. However, since the 1099 employees are also eligible for the program, you would not be able to include them as staff under your business. So again, for yourself, and certainly your business would be eligible, but those 1099 employees would be considered eligible in and of themselves, so they would have to submit their own applications for the program.
All right, let's keep taking questions if we can. Susan, for Joey, I'm a self-employed massage therapist. Being self-employed, I don't qualify for employment. What kind of benefits do I qualify for? I think this is the same answer, but I thought we'd ask it and try and get them all together. Who wants to answer that?
Yeah, sure. And I'll let Joe speak to this too, but you actually do qualify for unemployment under the new CARES Act. Sole proprietors and contractors do qualify for unemployment. And so two important things to note here. You also qualify for the SBA products we mentioned earlier, right? So the Paycheck Protection Program and or the Economic Injury Cash Advance Grant. What you would need to do is sit down and figure out which of those is more advantageous to you. So under unemployment, you get the extra $600 a week, and under the cash advance or the Paycheck Protection Program, you get 2 months worth of your average payroll that you usually pay yourself as a sole proprietor or contractor. And so my advice to folks is to figure out which of those gets you back to what you would have been prior to this disaster limit. And remember, the purpose of these programs is not to you can't double dip, right? So the purpose is to get folks back to what they would have been had this event, disaster, COVID-19 not happened. But it is important to note that it's not meant to supplement or double dip on those funds. And Joe, maybe you want to speak a little bit more to that.
Joey, thank you. I think I would just like to reiterate that you can only apply for one. You can't apply for both or any three of the programs. So you would have to find out, unemployment insurance would be paid from the date your circumstances changed or there was a loss in wages or hours as a massage therapist. It also, the federal pandemic unemployment compensation kicks in March 29th, where you'll get an additional $600 a week, and that program expires at the end of July in the current version of the legislation. And so for those 4 months, you will be eligible for whatever you put into the system as your income over the last 4 quarters, and that determines your weekly benefit. And then on top of that, you'll get a $600 benefit paid weekly for 4 months.
Our next question is from Sharon. She's from Longmont. I purchased an existing business, so I don't have the payroll for 2019. Can I still apply for the PPP?
I can take that.
Go ahead, Joe.
Or go ahead, Jen.
No. You got it.
Okay. Well, the short answer is no, because the Paycheck Protection Program looks at your past 12 months in order to calculate what 2 months of your payroll would be. So I think the prudent move in this scenario, the specific scenario, would be to apply for the economic injury disaster grant, the cash advance, because you do qualify for that still, even as a startup business. And I think, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong or add anything to that if I miss anything.
No, Joey, I think that's correct. It's hard to do this on the phone because sometimes there's certain bits of information that may change the eligibility, because there is some provisions if you've had a business for less than a year, but for by far and away, it is a year-to-year comparison based on maintaining that average full-time equivalent as well as wage and salary. So I think what Joey said is accurate, but of course, happy to discuss in greater length offline, and I want to make myself available to do so.
Jeremy's got a great question from Roxborough. Can I apply to multiple banks for the PPP program if I don't think it'll work with another?
The short answer to that is no. What happens is that banks are inundated with Paycheck Protection Program applications right now. And so what we've seen is if individuals apply to the Paycheck Protection Program at multiple banks, and their application sits in a stack until it's processed. If it gets processed by multiple banks, it'll cause an error on FBA's side of things, and so you're going to cause yourself a bit of a headache and the bankers a bit of a headache if you try to do that. So as soon as you find a bank that is willing and ready and to go on your Paycheck Protection Program application, stick with that bank and stick through it. It's still a good move to be persistent with that bank and make sure that they are getting through the stack as quick as they possibly can. But as soon as you find one, I would stick with that.
And James from Johnstown, he wants a little bit more clarification on the EIDL loan. What is it again, if you wouldn't mind, please?
Dan, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, sorry, I'm muting my phone. My apologies. Yeah, James, great question. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan offers up to $2 million in assistance per small business, and these loans are really kind of working capital loans. Whereas the Paycheck Protection Program is more payroll-oriented, this loan can be utilized to pay fixed debts, accounts payable, and other bills that couldn't be paid as a result of the disasters, or in this case, coronavirus's adverse impact on the business. The interest rate for these loans are 3.75% for small businesses. And it's also important to note that nonprofits are eligible for these. The nonprofit interest rate is 2.75%. In terms of repayment, it goes out to a maximum of 30 years, and that's determined on a case-by-case basis. But certainly there's a time frame and some flexibility for the small business owner in which they need to repay that loan. So it provides a little more flexibility, that's for certain.
Lori's question from Sedalia goes like this. I applied on April 1st for a PPP loan, haven't heard anything yet. Any thoughts to that? Today's the 14th. Any thoughts, please? Dan?
That's tough without knowing the full circumstance and some of the dynamics there, but I think it would certainly worth contacting that lender to inquire about the status, because that does seem like a extended amount of time. I know for some of the larger financial institutions who have encountered a very much a drastic increase in volume, that they are going on some of those longer durations in terms of waits. However, it's important to keep contact with your lender to ensure check status, make sure that your loan is in fact moving forward and being processed. But it's also important for you to know as a consumer that you have the ability to withdraw your loan at that institution and seek out another financial institution that might be able to process that in a more timely manner. I know that's kind of a hard situation to deal with, but hopefully after the amount of time, 13 days that you've spent, they're on the precipice of processing that. But I think it's worth you contacting them again just to make sure.
Yeah, Dan, and this is Mike. I'll just add to that. Dan's right. There are a whole host of reasons why that could be the case. I know from my banks, they were taking applications days before the rollout of the program, but then we had days, if not longer, of trying to get access to the system. So even though they had the application, they couldn't onboard them. I'll say in terms of my membership, I probably still have, I don't know, between 5 and 10% of my members that are still having access to the system problems. But like Dan said, you won't know exactly where the holdup is or why unless you talk to your lender.
This last ask, if you want to provide us your email address, press 77 on the keypad on your phone. Sean from Parker, he owns daycare, and he wants to know when the daycare will be reopened. When can he do it? Ken, maybe start with you first.
Say that again, Kurt.
Okay, Sean from Parker, he owns daycare, and he wants to kind of get an idea when the daycares will be reopened again. Any thoughts to that, please?
Sure. Sean, I think the best guesstimate that we can make is sometime in May. I think right now the governor has made it clear that we are shooting as a state for the end of April to begin the partial opening of the business economy. And my guess is in terms of different kids from different families interacting, that's not going to happen for several weeks after the disease, the rate of people catching this disease decreases substantially. So it might be May, it might be June. The challenge is going to be to get parents back to work when their infant children don't have daycare facilities. And so how the state of Colorado deals with that is going to be interesting to see, but they certainly are related in terms of how to open up the economy at this point.
Any other thoughts on that one? Okay. Susan is a single proprietor. She's from Longmont. LLC, doesn't have a track record for payroll. It's just using my own money to start up costs. Don't think I'm eligible for PPP. Can I still put in for an idle loan? Who wants to answer that, please?
I can take that, and it is a little. Some of these can get a little unique to your specific circumstance. So I just want to preface with that. But sole proprietors, independent contractors are eligible for the payroll protection program or paycheck protection program. Excuse me. We just need to have the appropriate documentation when you do your borrower form with the lender to demonstrate, payroll processor records, tax filings, Form 1099, or income and expenses from a sole proprietorship. So you have to demonstrate that level of income. If you don't have that documentation, it does get a little more tricky. But you got to provide some supporting documentation, such as bank records, sufficient just to demonstrate that there's a qualifying payroll amount. So it is a little nuanced, it is a little circumstantial, but sole proprietors are definitely eligible for the program. It's just important that you have the qualifying payroll documentation or justification when doing the borrower application.
And Dan, this is Mike. I think the questioner said they were a startup, but don't they have to have been in business from February 15th?
Yeah, Mike, that's a great question. So for businesses, the effective date, the covered period for the Paycheck Protection Program is February 15th of 2020 through June 30th of this year. So you have to have been in business by that point in order to be eligible for this program. If you were not, there is an avenue, but it is a little more complicated.
Well, thank you for that. We got a couple more questions we're going to try and squeeze in if we can in our limited amount of time. Congressman, you might want to start off on this. This is from Joe, and his question is, what can someone like me do to help people after this pandemic is over? Congressman?
Well, the first question is, have you had it or not? If you've had it and you have a certain immunity to it, then the doors are much more wide open. I have been involved. I have not had it, and to my knowledge anyway, and I have been involved in food drives to make sure that here in Weld County we are able to get food to folks that are shut in and helping the food bank. I think that there are a number of things, given maybe what your expertise is. If you're handy, there are going to be plenty of people that are shut in that need help in different ways. But I think the best thing we can do is to, all of us, is to stay positive and pray a lot and make sure that our neighbors know that we care about them, and we are going to do everything we can to help people. I know I have a friend in the landscaping business, and he is mowing the lawns of seniors for free because he wants to make sure that those seniors aren't outside and aren't susceptible to the disease, since they are the most prone to fatality with the disease. And I think that all of us are going to see opportunities in our community, whether it's through school groups or church groups or others, that we can help out. And I really appreciate your question, because it's the kind of attitude as Americans that we all need to have right now. How do we help others?
Let's take a couple more questions, and then everybody's going to have a chance to have some final thought with the final comments coming from the Congressman Debbie from Elbert. I understand that the $1,200 stimulus check is an advance payment on my 2020 refund. Is that something I need, that I'm going to have to pay back? Who wants to answer that, please?
This is Joey. I've not heard that. The advance is separate. The idea behind the CARES Act is really to keep the economy from slumping into a recession. So the idea is to get these stimulus checks out and keep the economy up and running. Will not affect anyone's returns. I apologize if I misunderstood the question, but.
No, and I understood the question the same way, and I agree with the answer. This is not an advance on a tax refund. This is meant to be an opportunity to try to help the economy, give people in certain income brackets money so that they can help them survive. I think it's a couple of the experts mentioned that the idea of this is to try to make people whole in this situation. I don't think anybody is going to end up whole in this situation. I think what we're trying to do is help people get through this with their businesses still intact, either in full or in part, and as we progress, get people back on their feet. But the federal government doesn't have the capacity to make everyone whole, but we do have the ability and incentive to make sure that businesses can reopen when this is over.
With the limited amount of time we have left, starting with Michael and Daniel and Joe and Joey, Michael, start us off with some final thoughts, if you would, please. Introduce yourself again and provide some thoughts. Same with you, Daniel, and Joe and Joey, if you would. And then the Congressman will bring us to the finish line. Go ahead, Michael, please.
Well, again, Mike Van Norstrand, the Executive Director of the Independent Bankers of Colorado, and I'd just like to echo what I think the Congressman was saying just now, is that we're seeing some great community effort out there, and I'm seeing it from our banks in terms of community outreach and community donations and things like that, which are some of the things that the community banks are doing. And these are tough times, and tough people rise to the occasion. I think it's happening across the board. Work with your lenders, particularly your community bank lenders, because like I said at the outside, your community bankers are your neighbors, and they care about you. So.
And I'll just echo Dan Nordberg, Regional Administrator for the Small Business Administration. Just want to thank Congressman Buck again, as well as his entire staff, for all their efforts and the partnership that we've had with them supporting small businesses during this difficult time, as well as all the other panelists. This is a come-together moment where we are all working together in tandem to try and support the small business community the way they've always supported us. And so we fully expect that's going to continue. For our part, again, SBA in terms of loans processed here in Colorado. We're close to 28,000 loans, up to $6 billion that have been processed, which is going to support small business owners and allow them to employ and continue to employ and retain the employees that they consider to be family. So we appreciate the opportunity again, look forward to subsequent conversations, and just know that help is on the way and it's continuing to come from the SBA.
Thank you,
Dan. This is Joe Barela. Joe Barela with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Just want to remind everyone to please be patient, but we know how important wages are not only to family financial needs, but communities in Colorado as a whole. And it seems like overnight, over many hundred thousands of Coloradans' work situation changed. If you're impacted by COVID, unemployment, furloughed, temporary layoffs, please apply for unemployment insurance today. You should be eligible. If you were on unemployment before this started, you will be eligible for unemployment moving forward and will be eligible for the new enhanced benefits that the CARES Act provides when that becomes available later this month. I want to remind independent contractors, gig economy workers, sole proprietors, that system will be up and running and it will be able to backdate your circumstances for several of you from when this started, and also you won't miss out on the additional $600 to help you during the financial hardship moving forward. So this is important. If you're healthy and your work was impacted and you want to go back to work, as we phase in the new normalcy, we're going to rely on a lot of you returning back to the place of work. We hope it's in the occupation or industry that you were displaced from, but there could be a chance that you might have to reskill and move into another job because that job may not come back. So please work with us through the Unemployment Insurance Division, coloradoui.gov. And if you're looking for work, you can always visit CDLE website, and we can help you facilitate employment if you're healthy and willing to go to work today.
And this is Joey Jenkins, and I'll just end with check out www.coloradosbdc.org/COVID. There you're going to find upcoming webinars, a lot of resource webinars we've already done that go over the CARES Act more in depth, go over the economic injury loan more in depth, finance or marketing, or how to prepare and get through times such as this, disaster preparedness and recovery and resilience. Also, just to mention again, it was mentioned there's a lot of people coming together. Source link down on that site, you're going to see a link that's alternative funding resources. And so again, that's a giant list. I think we've got 90 on there so far of various grants, loans, from private, public, cities, counties. So I encourage people to take a look at that too, because there are a lot of resources out there and a lot of people coming together to try to help in this time. So thanks.
Thank you, Joey, and I want to thank all four of our experts and the great advice that you have given and the insight that you've given. Folks, this is a time where Americans need to come together, and I really appreciate the fact that we have folks from the Polis administration as well as the Trump administration as well as private industry on the line with us today, and I hope that everyone understands that all of us in policy-making decisions, policy-making positions, as well as those who are on the front lines in our healthcare industry, as well as first responders, are doing everything we can to make sure America is safe and moves forward in this very difficult time. So thank you very much for being on the line. God bless you, and may God bless America.